Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 333, Going for a Spinda. The episode begins with Ash just having placed his 4th Home Gym badge, the Heat badge, in his badge case, and he had started to have lunch at a table with Brock, May, and Max, bragging about his 4 badges, as he looked at them in their case. Brock reminded Ash not to get overconfident, though, since he still had 4 more badges to get before he could enter the Hoenn League, though Ash, not taking Brock's advice, was overconfident, claiming that it would be very easy for him to get these last 4 badges. Ash and the gang then debate where they should go next, which was a topic of conversation brought up by Max, although Ash, upon being asked this question, thought for a little bit and realized that he had no clue where they should go next. This led Brock to check the map, looking for where the closest gym would be, and after looking at it for a bit, he realized that the next closest gym would be in a city known as Fortree City. And he was about to suggest going there, but upon closer inspection, he found out that the road to Fortree City was through a desert. So, instead, Brock suggested that they take a detour on their way to Fortree City, which also happened to be a shortcut over a mountain that would go back through Mauville City. Me and Max were a bit confused, as they knew of this shortcut, as it went from Mauville City back to Petalburg City, and they questioned if Brock wanted to go to Petalburg City. Brock confirmed this, stating that instead of going through to Fortree City right away, Ash should go back to Petalburg Gym first and challenge Norman, believing that Ash would be strong enough now that he had 4 badges. Max and May were very excited about going back to Petalburg, since it was their hometown, and they wanted to see their parents again. And Max and May were especially excited to eat their mom's home cooking again, and May was also excited to show Norman the Beautyfly she caught involved, and the Skitty she caught, as well as her Fall Arbor contest ribbon. And May and Max proceeded to have a vision of meeting up with their parents again. May, Max, and Brock then asked Ash what he thought of the idea of going back to Petalburg, leading Ash to remember when he battled Norman and his Vigoroth in an unofficial battle. And he also remembered how he got his ass beat by Norman since he only had Pikachu, but now that he had more of a team of Hoenn Pokemon, he was ready for a full battle, and he was determined to have a rematch with Norman and prove himself. As Ash and Pikachu got up out of their chair and punched the air in excitement, May and Max warned Ash that their father was a tough opponent, but Ash pointed out that he got stronger as well, and had faith that he could beat Norman, and was excited to go to Petalburg City immediately, so Brock, May, and Max got up out of their chairs as well, and started walking through the mountains, first to Mauville City, so that they could get to Petalburg from there, while Ash envisioned challenging Norman to a full battle, 3-on-3, now that he had more than 3 Pokemon. Eventually, as Ash and the gang walked through a field on a mountain on the way back to Mauville, they encountered a Pokemon that Ash had never seen before, which walked by them and blocked their path. Ash thought this Pokemon looked like it was about to be knocked out, because it looked like it had those little swirly eyes that knocked out Pokemon usually had, so he wondered if it was alright. So he checked the Pokedex to see if it was alright or anything, and he found out that this Pokemon was known as a Spinda, and it was actually supposed to look like its eyes were super weird and like it was knocked out. But he also learns that all of the Spinda had different patterns on its ears, and slightly different eye patterns. Max then pointed out how all the Spinda's patterns were different when several more Spinda emerged from the bushes, and they all started moving in a weird motion. Just then, yet another Spinda comes out, although May noted that it seemed a little shy, and one of the spots on its head was shaped like a heart, and May commented on how cute it was. Just then, as May was about to get closer to the Spinda with the heart on its head, Ash and the gang hear a woman approaching, calling for Spinda, and upon hearing a woman, Brock was obviously about to simp, but he saw that a man was approaching with her, so his simping gets cut off, as all the Spinda then run off as soon as the girl and the man approach. With Brock falling to the ground in disappointment, knowing that he likely didn't have a chance with this beautiful girl, since there was a dude with her. Thankfully for Brock, though, the girl and the man then introduced themselves, with the girl being named Claire and the man being named Royce, although Royce was her butler, so Brock still had a chance. So he tried to flirt with Claire, although Max dragged him off by the ear as usual. But not before Brock got off an introduction of himself, as well as a poem about her and him. However, Brock manages to get back up and tries flirting again. Damn, he must have been really desperate. And we then see images of C-Dot, Abra, and Crawdon, as Brock mentions how he was as sincere as a C-Dot, adorable as an Abra, and cute as a Crawdon. But this time, both Max and May drag him off by the ear, and he was down for a while. Not just physically, but mentally, as Max insulted Brock, saying he was actually as psycho as a Psyduck. Royce then asks Claire if she had spotted Spinda anywhere, since he had been walking a bit behind her, so he didn't get to see the Spinda, but Claire revealed that she did, which was why she was calling for it, but confirmed that it ran away, along with all the other Spinda. Ash and the gang were kind of confused as to what the fuck this girl was talking about, thinking that the Spinda was wild, but Claire confirmed that the Spinda with the heart shape on it was hers, and it was her lucky Spinda that was given to her by a close friend for safekeeping, and she had to bring it back quickly. Claire then starts breaking down a little bit, leading Royce, her butler, to comfort her, assuring her that they would find her Spinda eventually. Royce and Claire then ask Ash and the gang if they had seen their heart-shaped Spinda, not knowing that they had, because by the time they arrived, the Spinda had just went into the bushes, so they thought that Ash and the gang missed it or something. Ash and the gang clarified that they did in fact see a heart-shaped Spinda, the one that Royce and Claire were looking for, but just to make sure it was the right one, Claire and Royce showed Ash and the gang photos of the Spinda, and they confirmed that yes, this was the one that they had seen. Ash, May, and Max then introduced themselves, as they promised to help Claire and Royce find the heart-shaped Spinda, although Brock didn't want to be shown up, so he promises to help find Claire's Spinda as well, declaring that he would do it all on his own if he had to. He would do whatever it takes. And he even holds Claire's hands forcefully to prove this point, trying to make sure she understood. Just then, though, Brock was shocked, as Royce pushed Claire out of the way and thanked Brock for volunteering his assistance, and declared that, yes, they would get Claire's Spinda back. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Ash and the gang, and Claire and Royce, just as they were debating where Spinda could have ran off to, Team Rocket was listening in using a radar dish that they had hid in a nearby bush to amplify Ash and the gang's voices. And upon hearing about the whole situation, including how the Spinda Ash and the gang were looking for was lucky, Team Rocket wanted to steal it for themselves and use its luck to bring them money. And Meowth then added that they could also use the Spinda as bait to lure Pikachu to capture him as well. Anyways, Brock decides to take the lead and leads May, Max, Ash, Claire, and Royce through the nearby woods on the mountain to search for Spinda through multiple bushes. After a while of searching, Ash and the gang, Claire, and Royce were beginning to get pretty discouraged as they couldn't find any, even as they started yelling for Spinda, but suddenly they heard a rustle in a nearby bush, and a Spinda came out, first spotted by May. But when they compared this Spinda with the picture of the heart-shaped one, Max pointed out that the Spinda that was currently there was not it, because it didn't have a heart mark on its face, but instead it had a circle mark on its face. Eventually, Ash and the gang managed to stumble upon a whole bunch of Spinda, but all of them were not ones that they needed. And Ash and the gang saw that each of these Spinda had different markings on their heads, so it made it even more difficult to find the one with the heart that they needed. Suddenly, Brock noticed another Spinda, which actually looked like it had a heart-shaped mark on its head, and he was almost positive that that was the one they needed. It unfortunately started to run away, but Brock beelined towards it and slid on the ground, scraping his ass, but he managed to grab it. Upon further inspection of the Spinda, though, much to Brock's surprise and dismay, it didn't have a heart-shaped spot. It instead had a mark of a broken heart. And this upset Brock, not just because it wasn't the right Spinda, but because the broken heart mark reminded him of his constant failure with women, and how he constantly had a broken heart. So he dropped that Spinda relatively hard and let it go off. Just then, Claire and Royce noticed a Spinda in the distance, which they were able to identify as having a heart on it, and they called Ash and the gang over, and when they looked and compared it to the picture they were given, yes, this was the Spinda they were looking for. So, Ash and Max decided to take action, as they hide behind a tree, and when the Spinda wasn't looking, they leap out from behind and grab it, although they missed, and as a result, they fell on the ground, and this caused the Spinda to run away, since their thumping on the ground was too loud. Ash and the gang then track the Spinda, and they see it run to a whole bunch of other Spinda. So now, they couldn't tell what the correct Spinda was, because there were so many Spinda in one place who looked nearly identical. So, Ash and the gang all looked at the pictures they were given, trying to find the correct Spinda, as they looked on one on rocks, they looked on some on trees, etc. They just kept fucking looking. They then decided to all split up and look at specific Spinda to make it easier to identify them, but before they could actually identify the one they were looking for, they noticed the wind get very strong. As Ash and the gang looked for the source of this wind, Ash eventually looked up to the sky as Pikachu almost got sucked up from the wind into Team Rocket's vacuum. Though, thankfully, Ash was able to catch Pikachu before he went in, but anyways, they saw Team Rocket using their vacuum to suck up all the Spinda from the ground. Soon, all the Spinda were sucked up except for one, and as this one was being sucked up, Ash and the gang, Royce and Claire, recognized it as the one they were looking for, the one with the heart mark. Ash and the gang couldn't do anything to save it, as it was sucked in with the rest, and Team Rocket did their motto, while they laughed at the fact that they had captured all the Spinda. Claire asked Team Rocket why the fuck they were taking her Spinda, leading Team Rocket to take the heart-shaped Spinda out of the can where all the Spinda were sucked into, with James declaring that they were going to use the Lucky Spinda's power to grant them luck. But as soon as he takes out the Spinda with the heart mark, it uses Dizzy Punch on Jesse and James, making both of them dazed. A few seconds later, Team Rocket comes to their senses, and they begin to angrily yell at the Spinda for doing that shit. But this just lets the Spinda to make its eyes start glowing, meaning it was using hypnosis, putting Team Rocket to sleep. And with Team Rocket no longer piloting the balloon, this caused it to go crashing down to the ground, and busting up both the balloon and the vacuum. Ash and the gang had observed Team Rocket's balloon come crashing down to the ground, and they go up to it to find Jesse, James, and Meowth still knocked out, just barely coming conscious. And they also find the heart-shaped Spinda, so they quickly rush to grab it. But then, it runs away, along with the rest of the Spinda, which come out of the destroyed vacuum, and Ash and the gang lose track of it, since all the almost identical-looking Spinda run off in the same direction. Having lost sight of it, Ash and the gang had decided to split up to try and find it faster. Though they quickly reunited after none of them could find Spinda, even while split up. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the woods, Team Rocket had recovered, becoming fully conscious, and they left the wreckage of their balloon to go look for the heart-shaped Spinda as well, wanting its lucky abilities, although they were having no luck. But suddenly, Jessie got an idea when she spotted a wild Teddiursa walk by. That was supposed to make finding the Spinda a lot easier. So, Jessie proceeds to call the Teddiursa over, and then, once the Teddiursa was close enough, Jessie and James used bug nets to capture Teddiursa, and then they tied it to a tree, and managed to put a Spinda disguise on it. Jessie then ordered James and Meowth to hide in some bushes with 2 nets, threatening like they were going to do something to it, and explained her plan. Basically, now that they made it look like Teddiursa was a Spinda who was in danger, Jessie was hoping that this would lure out some other Spinda that would come to help it. And then hopefully the Spinda with the heart mark would come, and Team Rocket would just capture all the Spinda until they found the heart-shaped one. After waiting a while though, no Spinda came, so Jessie claimed that it was because the Teddiursa wasn't acting enough like a Spinda, so she ordered it to move to the left, then to the right, doing the motions that most Spinda did. Instead of obeying though, the Spinda just squirms around in place, trying to break free from its ties. Just then, a wild Ursaring, who happened to be the wild Teddiursa's father, had been looking for its son Teddiursa after noticing that it had gone missing, and it of course found its son Teddiursa and recognized it despite the Spinda disguise. and it went to go retrieve its son, sneaking up behind Jessie, though since it was behind Jessie, only James and Meowth noticed it, since they were staring at it from inside the bush. James and Meowth tried to warn Jessie of something behind her, but she was too focused on getting the Teddy Ursa to obey her, so she ignored them, although she then heard the Teddy Ursa squeaking and trying to look past her, so she finally looked behind, and she noticed the Ursa ring right as it let out a hyper beam, sending Team Rocket blasting off. And the Ursa ring then goes away, taking its son Teddy Ursa with it, untying it from the tree. The Ursa ring's anger then subsided since it had its son back, and it retreated into the bushes with its son. Meanwhile, a random man was going up the mountain through another part of the forest, and he seemed to be looking for something, as he exclaimed that he was almost there, as he rubbed his hands through his hair, utterly exhausted. Meanwhile, Ash and the gang, Royce, and Claire were still searching for the Spinda when suddenly Max found some tracks and called Royce over to identify them, but unfortunately, Royce didn't think that those tracks belonged to the heart-marked Spindas. So, knowing that they couldn't find Spinda otherwise, Ash decided to send out his Tailo to search from the air. Just after this, though, May and Brock spot a Spinda who they believed was the one they were looking for, so Brock slid on the ground once again, scraping his ass. But much to Brock's dismay, just like the first time he scraped his ass, the Spinda wasn't the one they were looking for. It was the one with the goddamn broken heart, so Brock was reminded of his constant failures with women once again. Brock, of course, dropped the Spinda back on the ground immediately, but before he did, the Spinda was angry about being picked up by Brock twice, so it hit him. Claire was very depressed to find out that it wasn't the Spinda that she needed, as she really hoped that the Spinda didn't get hungry or hurt. But she was still just sad at the fact that she couldn't find it in general, and this led May to ask why Claire liked that Spinda so much anyways, not believing that it actually gave that much good luck. This leads Claire to remember the day when she first met Spinda on a flower field while reading a book. And Claire then specified that she needed it for something special, not just to give it back to its trainer. But before she could specify what this was, May was bored with her story, so she was focusing on her surroundings and remarked how they had almost made it to the top of the mountain, and this distracts Claire, who focuses on how beautiful the top of the mountain was getting. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was exhausted as fuck from their blast-off, but they managed to recover somewhat and tiredly climb up the mountain. James was the first one to make the climb, shortly followed by Meowth, and then Wobbuffet, who forcibly popped out of Jessie's Pokeball as she arrived. Meowth and James were bitching about how they were blasted off by the Ursa Ring, and tried their best to think of a new plan to try and get Spinda back. Since Meowth and James had come to the conclusion that disguising another Pokemon as Spinda wouldn't work, but Jessie claimed that the disguising part was fine. It was just the Teddy Ursa not acting like a Spinda that didn't work, so she suggested that they disguise Meowth as a Spinda and tie him up to try and alert the other Spinda. And James agreed to this, although Meowth was hesitant as fuck. Despite Meowth's protesting, though, Jessie and James tied him to a rock and disguised him as a Spinda. Meowth claimed that no Spinda would come to him, no matter what he did, and tried to convince Jessie and James of this, but Jessie and James just told Meowth to practice moving like a Spinda, and he reluctantly obliged, and eventually, after much waiting, Jessie and James began to think that maybe Meowth was right. No Spinda would come, but much to their surprise, the heart-shaped Spinda finally arrived, wanting to save Meowth. James and Jessie were pleased. They didn't even have to wait for other Spinda to go by, so they quickly got their nets ready and emerged from the rock that they were hiding behind, and they slammed down their nets, but they both landed on Meowth, capturing him instead of the heart-shaped Spinda. The heart-shaped Spinda gets freaked out by this, so it begins to run away, so the frustrated Team Rocket, including Meowth, who has now removed his Spinda disguise, chase after the Spinda, with Meowth also having freed himself from the rock, obviously. And when they end up getting to the end of the cliff that they were chasing the Spinda on, much to their surprise, this Spinda started to dance wildly, and it appeared to be dancing to a song, confusing Team Rocket, because they didn't understand where the music was coming from. But regardless, they thought the song was catchy, so they started to dance along with the Spinda, following its moves. Eventually, though, Team Rocket starts dancing too wildly, which makes them realize that the Spinda had used Teeter Dance to confuse them. But just as they realized this, they fell under its full effects, and they started dancing so uncontrollably that they ended up breaking the part of the edge of the cliff that they were standing on, and once it broke, they fell into the river below the mountain. Right after this happened, it was revealed that May, Claire, and Brock had split up from Royce, Ash, and Max to cover more ground, with Royce, Ash, and Max following Tailo, and Brock, May, and Claire happened to be following the heart-shaped Spinda, as the heart-shaped Spinda noticed them approaching, so it quickly ran away, going up the mountain. But May, Brock, and Claire still had it in their sights, so they followed it up the mountain, and eventually, the Spinda, as well as May, Brock, and Claire, had arrived at a beautiful flower field of Spinda, entirely full of Spinda. Suddenly, much to Claire's surprise, the Spinda with the heart-shaped mark actually wanted to talk to her, so she bends down to it and realizes that the Spinda was holding a flower, and it gives it to her, and she thanks it. Upon getting the flower, this reminded Claire that this flower field was actually the field where she first met this Spinda in the first place, and came to the conclusion that this Spinda must have just wanted to return to its old home, and they must have wanted Claire to come and see it as well, so that they could revisit the spot where they first met. So Spinda wasn't running away this whole time, it just wanted to show her back to the flower field. Just then, May notices Tailo, Max, Ash, and Royce approach, revealing that Tailo had managed to track the Spinda all to this flower field. Once Ash, Max, Royce, and Tailo had reunited with the others, and they expressed how happy they were to see each other, and how happy they all were that Claire and Spinda had reunited, Claire explained that this place was actually very special to both her and the heart-shaped Spinda, not just because this was the place where the two of them met, but also the place where Claire met Spinda's actual owner for the first time. Brock then feels something tugging at his leg, so he looks down to see that the Spinda with the broken heart mark was on his leg, and it seemed to like him. Although Brock didn't reciprocate the feeling, he was terrified. Now, Brock, do you understand how it feels when you try and flirt with women, and then they don't like you back? Things then get even worse for Brock, as a man appears, the same man from earlier who appeared to be looking for something and said he was almost there, calling for Claire's name. Claire ran up to him, recognizing him and identifying him as Kane, and she was happy to see him, claiming that she was looking for him because she was gonna come and find him after she had retrieved his Spinda, revealing that this guy, Kane, was the heart-shaped Spinda's owner. Why would Brock be mad about this, you may ask? Well, it's because Royce then exclaimed he was happy to see Kane as well, referring to him as Claire's fiancé, and obviously Brock loved Claire, so he was depressed as hell to find out that she was already engaged. Although the Spinda with the broken heart symbol tried to comfort him, which just made Brock even more pissed off. Brock tried to see if he could still have a chance with Claire somehow, asking why Kane had left if he loved Claire so much, leading Royce to explain that Kane was simply just traveling the regions for a little while, Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn, to find unusual Pokemon, and while he was gone, he decided to leave Spinda to Claire as a gift of his love to show that he still loved her, even while he was gone, making Brock depressed that he truly had no chance with her, although he claims, not wanting to seem like a loser, that he was happy for Claire. Although it was very obvious to Ash and the gang that this was just a lie, and Brock was just trying to make himself not seem like a loser. Then Brock tearfully watches as Claire reaffirms her love for Kane by giving the heart-shaped Spinda back to him, confirming that she tried her best to look after it, and that's why she worked so hard to make sure she didn't lose it and chased after it. Kane then picks up the same flower that the heart-shaped Spinda had gave to Claire. Well, not the exact same, but the same kind, and he gives it to her, and upon seeing Kane give it to her as opposed to the heart-shaped Spinda, Claire recalls how that was the flower that Kane gave her when they first met. Seeing Kane give her this flower also reminded Claire that she had actually lost the first flower that Kane had gave to her, and comes to the conclusion that maybe the heart-shaped Spinda realized this, and that's why it wanted to give her a flower, so that it wouldn't seem like she lost the flower that Kane gave to her, because that would have been really embarrassing for her. Claire and Kane were so happy to see each other that they were about to kiss, but then their romantic moment was interrupted as everyone felt an earthquake, and immediately following this earthquake, Team Rocket suddenly come up from the cliff that they had fallen off of and rise up in a gigantic Spinda mech. They soon emerge from the mech, standing on top, and then they do what they usually did, which was deploy arms from the mech to grab and collect the Spinda inside the mech's chest. Ash goes in to use Pikachu to have him use Thunderbolt, but Kane interrupts, telling Ash to let him handle this, wanting to save the Spinda himself, as he tells his heart-shaped Spinda to try hypnosis to try and put Team Rocket to sleep to stop them from operating the mech. But Meowth just pushes a button to take out a huge reflector dish on the mech, which reflects the hypnosis back at Ash and the gang and Kane, putting Kane's Spinda to sleep. With Spinda asleep, Team Rocket begins to use the arm in the mech to take Kane's Spinda from him, but Pikachu intervenes, going to use Thunderbolt. But Team Rocket then launches the other arm towards Ash and the gang, Kane, Claire, and Pikachu, and this causes Pikachu to stop using Thunderbolt, as he has to jump out of the way to avoid the hand that was threatening to punch him, and this allows Team Rocket to use the other hand to capture Kane's Spinda. Claire was really upset, since she felt like she should have done something to protect Kane's Spinda, because Kane had left Spinda in her care before, so she still felt responsible for it. Brock tried to take the opportunity to comfort Claire, stating that it wasn't her fault, although Claire was so distraught that she ended up fainting in Royce's arms. Brock, knowing that it was Team Rocket's fault that Claire was experiencing sadness and had just fainted, took out his anger on Team Rocket, declaring that nobody, especially Team Rocket, had the right to make Claire unhappy, as he sent out all three of his Pokemon, Mudkip, Lotad, and Fortress, to attack the Spinda robot, with Lotad starting off with a Razor Leaf and Mudkip starting off with a Water Gun, but these attacks didn't do anything to the mech, with their attacks just being deflected, as Team Rocket laughed, releasing one of the arms on the mech to hurt Mudkip and Lotad by punching them. Ash and Kane began to panic, not knowing if Brock's Pokemon could do the job, but then Brock threw Fortress at the mech and told it to use Tackle, although Fortress had a better idea, as it tackled the mech, but then used Explosion. This severely damages the Spinda mech, releasing all the Spinda from it, as they all fall to the ground, with the exception of Kane's Spinda, since it was still being held by the arm, which was still functional. Brock questioned why the mech hadn't exploded yet and was only severely damaged, but it turns out that it was only the tackle that had damaged the mech so far. The explosion had yet to take effect, and it soon did take effect, destroying the mech, and including the arm, and therefore sending Kane's Spinda flying. Brock goes to catch Kane's Spinda, and he does, but then he realized that Kane actually caught his heart-shaped Spinda, so he wondered who he had caught and how there were two Spinda, and he then realized that there was actually two Spinda that were being held in Team Rocket's mech arm, and the Spinda that Brock had caught, much to his dismay, was the one with the broken heart symbol that always annoyed him. So Brock sighed in annoyance at having this Spinda in his own hands, as Team Rocket panicked with their mech destroyed, and they only panicked more as Ash had Pikachu use Thunderbolt, now not hesitating, since no more Spinda would have been at risk if he used it, and this Thunderbolt sent Team Rocket blasting off. Kane and Claire, along with the heart-shaped Spinda, were now reunited, and they thanked each other for everything that they had done for each other and the gifts. while Brock just hid behind a bush, ashamed, because Claire didn't even thank him at all for helping out with destroying the robot and all that, and she didn't even see that because she was fainted, and she just happened to wake up as soon as Team Rocket was blasted off. So Brock simply recalled his Pokemon, and he hugged the Spinda with the broken heart mark on it, stating that even though it annoyed him, they at least had each other, and they had the fact that they each had a broken heart in common. Claire and Kane declare that they were still in love with each other, despite being separated for a while, and Ash and the gang congratulate Claire and Kane on their love, and Brock does this as well, although he was crying when he said this. The episode then ends with Ash and the gang saying goodbye to Royce, Kane, and Claire, with Brock declaring that he would find happiness with a girl one day, although Ash and Pikachu doubted this, as the screen faded out, showing a heart around Pikachu's face. And Ash determined to get to Petalburg City for his 5th gym badge, although first he had to get to Mauville City.